Stef, host of the Sunscreen Sessions podcast. Excited to be here celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Sunscreen Film Festival.
My name is Bob Brown. I am the writer, director, and producer of the feature film Brown.
I'm Dr. David Strahle. I'm the executive producer, and they tell me the storyline is about me.
Hello, I'm Cody John, and I played younger Dr. Strahle here.
I want to go ahead and kick it right off. Let's get into Grounded. So it's great to, have a little bit behind the scenes of the film itself, but I would love to hear more from you.
A couple of things that Bob convinced me of was that even though they were going to use my life in this movie, it was to be an example for everyone, to take a look at what happened to them and the little subtle twists and turns that just made a huge difference in my life. And by showing people that, they would say, gee, I remember things that happened to me. And that's why we felt that it would be for everyone to look at and enjoy. And one of the people said to me who evaluated the film, I love a film where my emotions go up and then they go down, and then they go up and then they go down. And it's full of that.
And I do love a roller coaster movie because it reminds me the range of emotions we have, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes we can find ourselves stuck in these moments of low lows or high highs. But when we get to immerse ourselves in a film, we remember all the emotions we can have as well.
I've seen it 15 times and I still go up and down and up and down.
I love it. I love that. So Cody, let's talk a little bit more about this. So you play the younger Dr. Strahle.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. No, I was honored to be part of this film and tell his beautiful life story. And there are indeed some ups and downs. And the way it was filmed, they did the older version of David first, then I came in after. And so in my part of the story, there's like a budding romance, my first ever patient that I formed a special bond with. But just, I'd get one of these every once in a while, and I thought, okay, that means...
But Bob kept you straight up.
Bob kept, Bob, this guy, yeah. You don't want to mess with this guy.
Yeah, I love it.
For sure, yeah.
Don't ask what about Bob.
No.
No, that's good. And it's great to have that opportunity to see that. And even if it's not direct feedback on your performance, watching his mannerisms, watching how he responds to things, but then also making the character your own.
Right.
Like David, you said, this is not just your story. It's a story that everyone can see themselves in.
Well, when Bob was asking me questions, did I have anything earlier in life that people don't know about? Because he wanted to change and work on film that was created based on a true story. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, yeah, there's something you don't know. And he says, well, that's not possible. So I went through this story. It took me an hour to explain it. And he looked at me, he said, that didn't happen to you. I said, yeah, it did. He said, I've known you your whole life. How could this be? And I said to him, nobody knows about it. Mm. My 3 children, my 3 girls don't know about it. And so that's when he really keened up and just started writing drafts. Let me do a draft. And I go, well, okay, I'm not so sure I really want you to do this. And after 30 drafts, and 3 table reads, they then said, you've got to send this in to Hollywood. And we met 4 days there with 18 different people. And I still was resistant because it's very personal. But one guy, he looked at me and he said, I can see you're resistant to letting this go farther. And I said, well, it is very personal. And he goes, I want to tell you something. I said, okay. He said, in 100 years from now, someone's going to watch this film and change their life. Mm. And then he said, it will immortalize your wife as well. And then I said, fine, let's go ahead and open this up. And the response has been much greater than we thought.
Back when I started to learn to fly at age 15, I went about 4 years into it and almost was killed by a thunderstorm. And I realized after I studied it, I was an aerospace student at the time, that we had a real big problem. We were losing a commercial airliner one every 23 months. Because dense clouds were obscuring the thunderstorms. And that became an issue that I eventually solved. It took 20 years. Now later on, decades later, I'm in medicine. First mammogram comes up, and here is the same problem. Dense tissue trying to find the cancer. And that's what I worked on. And the paper eventually, after 7 years, oh my gosh, it was published. Well, and Bob was impressed with it. I mean, I just was working and trying to make things work. But Bob said, gee, we got to put some of that in the story. Yeah, it's a pretty emotional ride.
I think the story, like you said, is something that needs to be told. We can all resonate with love, loss, and a life of it is my life worth living.
Sure. I had to say one other thing. When we did the last table read, we had some people crying in it, and one lady stood up and said, "This really happened to you in medical school?" I said, "Yes." And then she looked at Bob and said, "Bob, I can't believe that you wrote this beautiful script about your friend." And it was. I wasn't really going to let him do this, but it was so well written. Holy mackerel. And then we kept working on it.
Oh no, so I mean, your theme is legacy, and we all, subconsciously or consciously have a legacy question in our mind. And the interesting thing about living life, and I've been in the movie business 25 years, and this is my 18th feature, and by far this is the best thing I've ever made. And the reason is because the dots are starting to line up, and the older you get, the more you recognize this is a finite experience, and when you come to the conclusion that, one day this is going to be over, time becomes more important, and priority becomes more important, and value becomes more important, and genuineness, all that becomes more important. And, everybody's out there trying to survive, and everybody's out there struggling. Everybody is struggling. And as you get older and you begin to figure things out, it becomes so apparent. And, you can look back and have regrets, or you look back and say, well, I learned and I evolved and I've changed. And that's why this film resonates with the audience, is because the theme of all of those questions is a true line.
Well, one last thing I'll say too is we had a title for the movie, and then we started showing this to the people and whatever. And finally, Bob and I realized, our title kind of tells the theme of what's going on here. And why don't we just shorten it to just Grounded? Because several people come to us and say, well, you named it Grounded because of this, right? I look at Bob and say, no, not really. We had, out of 10 people, we had 8 of them that did not understand or why we call it Grounded. They had a different reason. So there's different parts in the movie that people say, oh, that's why they named it Grounded, or that's why. So we never let it out why we called it Grounded. And we still have never told anyone yet.
I love that. As we wrap up, I want each of you to answer in your own words what it means to you to live a life of legacy.
Well, I think living a life of legacy is, it takes a lifetime to figure it out. But,
Right.
When you're closing in on the end, and we still got, a long way to go, hopefully. I think you begin to understand what the purpose is. And, when you understand what the purpose is, then, then it's easier to spend your time, effort, energy, love, on that purpose. And all of the other stuff that distracts you, all the other noise in society, and especially in this business, the noise level is extremely high in the entertainment business. When you can, understand what that truly is and push through that, everybody says it's a cliche, but everybody wants to live their best life. And being the best life is being genuine to you and everybody around you. And the longer you live, the more you figure out, who was genuine and who wasn't. I'll tell you just a quick story. I had a friend tell me that, this was maybe 10 years ago. He said, Bob, just because somebody's friendly doesn't mean they're your friend. Mm-hmm. And I went, how dumb am I? Because I had never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. But that was so true, because you always feel this, betrayal or dismissal or just this confusion. I don't get it. It doesn't seem to jibe. But he's put it in those words, and I go, man, that's absolutely correct. Friendly people, that doesn't mean they're your friends. It just means they're dancing,
Exactly.
That's all it means. So anyway, that's just an example.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave?
Well, I never looked at it as legacy. All I looked at it was like I had to do a lot of work, and I'm still working. It was very nice, though, that the American Cancer Society has now jumped in on this film.
Cody, living a life of legacy.
I think living a life of legacy is maybe less about what you personally leave behind, and maybe how you have affected the lives of the people around you, which David knows. I think that's leaving a true legacy, is how you've affected the people around you.
When we're talking about leaving a life of legacy, we want to reduce the noise, do the work, and impact the people. And here's to living a life of legacy. This has been Sunscreen Sessions with the gentleman who brought us Grounded.